Welcome, everybody. For those of you that haven't heard, my name is Christopher Walls, and we'll be starting. It's right at 2, so we'll be starting now. Thank you for joining us today for NetGain Technologies webinar on a day on the cybersecurity desk. So we'll be taking a look at what goes on a cybersecurity help desk on a day-to-day basis, what sort of issues those technicians can help you with, and how it's different from your typical end user help desk. You'll hear us refer to that a lot today, probably end user help desk. And what we mean by that is simply the people you call that will, handle your laptop needs replacing, or like a key on the keyboard doesn't work, or you need some software updated, something like that. We refer to that as an end user help desk. And at least for us, it's separate than a security help desk. So today we're going to be answering that question of why are they separate? What different things can these two groups help you with? And what's the value in having them be separate, and the value in a security help desk overall? I would also like to say we will have time for a Q&A at the end of today. We'll fill those through a questions pane. I'll get to that in just a bit, but there will be time to speak with both of our presenters today. And speaking of our presenters, I'd like to introduce Braxton and Quentin. Braxton, would you mind introducing yourself for a minute?
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Chris. My name is Braxton Moulton. I'm the Technical Security Director here at NetGain Technologies. My primary role is to work as your virtual Chief Security Officer. That is essentially, working with you for small to medium-sized businesses, helping to improve your cybersecurity posture. That is primarily driven through, different types of cybersecurity frameworks, depending on your business vertical and the needs of your business. Outside of that, I will also work with you for like audit assistance, perhaps cybersecurity awareness training, vulnerability testing, anything that might be required from a cybersecurity front from your business.
Thanks, Braxton. We'll also be hearing a little bit later in today's presentation from Quentin Panzarella, who is a cybersecurity technician. Quentin, would you mind just briefly introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Quentin Panzarella, and I work here at NetGain as a security help desk. My job involves triaging all of our tickets with the security help desk, looking at any kind of alerts that we may see, and responding to potential threats.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. So we're going to be doing today, just very briefly, like I said, we're going to look at what a cybersecurity service desk is, exactly what they do, and how that's different from end user support. Sometimes we hear from clients that could be a little confused around why they are different and what sort of specific issues each can help with. So we'll be addressing that to start off today, and then also asking what's the value in a security service desk, and specifically what's the value for smaller or medium-sized businesses. And then for the second half of the presentation, we'll be talking specifically to Quentin, who's kind of on the front lines of cybersecurity here at NetGain, and what he does on a day-to-day basis to keep the networks, and by that I mean clients, right? The clients that he works with safe day in and day out. And then finally, we'll finish up with a few minutes for Q&A, where you're free to ask anything to either Quentin or Braxton or myself, but I'm not the cybersecurity expert here, so it'll probably be one of them answering it. But to do that, if you look on your GoToWebinar panel, you'll have a questions pane that you can expand down. And it's just a simple chat interface, essentially. Feel free to ask your question there. That'll push it over to us on the backside. And once we get to the Q&A portion, I'll pull those, and we'll see what Quentin or Braxton have to say. There's also a chat panel as well. Feel free to ask questions there as well if it's easier. There is somebody watching chat that will help put that into the questions pane, and we'll make sure to get to it one way or the other. Finally, there will be a few polls during our presentation today. We'll actually kick one off here in just a second. During these polls, the presentation will actually shift to the polling system where you'll see the question and a couple of answers that you can choose from. They're all multiple choice type questions. Just some things to get you thinking and to see how you're approaching cybersecurity today. And like I said, we'll actually kick off with one of those right now. And we're curious, has your organization, or maybe an organization you've been a part of in the past, maybe, has it ever been successfully attacked with some sort of cybersecurity attack? This could be a ransomware attack, something, something fraudulent funds transfer, could be any number of things. And you should see that question popping up now. We'll just give a minute or two here to collect some answers and see. It looks like so far, oh well, I was going to say overwhelmingly no, but now it's actually pretty close to closer to 50-50. Looks like it's kind of coming down here to about 33% say yes and 67% say no. That's interesting. I would actually expect higher, to be honest, on the yes side of things, just because these sorts of attacks can be fairly common. Well, we'll move into our first topic, and that is this broad question of what is a security service desk and what exactly are they doing to keep you safe. So Braxton, would you mind speaking to this a bit? What exactly is the service desk, at least here at NetGain, doing, and what are some of the techniques or some of the benefits of that?
Sure. So one thing I would like to, I'm a little bit interested in that percentage as well, too, Chris, from that poll. One thing I'd probably say is that there's probably a really good chance that you have been attacked and you simply don't know it. So that one of the benefits, to a security service desk is that now you have, people kind of in your corner looking at the different types of events that are occurring in your network, and that will provide a little bit more information and context behind what's actually occurring inside your network, and that would give you probably a better idea on if there is like a bad actor or someone even attempting something inside your environment. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't have like a team that is actually kind of combing over logs, event log data to kind of provide you that type of service or understanding, you are technically you are blind to that, so you may not be aware. So the big difference between like a security service desk and like your end user help desk that you might typically see is some of the work that you would have for like your end user support desk, like, hey, this application's not working, my my mouse isn't working, keyboard, what have you, anything from like desktop support, something that would work, you would work with your end users on like a day-to-day basis to make sure that they're able to do their job and to do their business for you. A security service desk is going to be a little bit more proactive. And although I would still argue that, a common thing you might hear for cybersecurity is that cybersecurity is, it's to help you do business. We're here to help make sure that you can do business. And so is an end user support desk. But where the difference is that there's a lot of that proactive work within a security service desk that we will be performing. So you might have heard it before, but typically like a security service desk is centered around a SIEM, which is a security information and event management appliance or a solution one. And what that's going to do is it's going to aggregate the logs, whether it's from events that are happening on the endpoint, network traffic that's going through from east to west inside your environment to north to south. Like, is it leaving? Is it coming in? And then like anything that could be happening, like the firewall, for instance, or what type of like cloud services or applications that you might be having, and what is actually taking place within those solutions. some appliances are even capable of ingesting all of that data. And what that's going to do is it's going to aggregate those logs and those events and provide you context. Now, that's great, but the immediate issue with that, for especially like an SMB, is that now you have to have someone there to review that, to analyze that, and that could be particularly expensive. So, for example, like having like a SOC team that's available to you in the SMB market can, come at a better cost to actually hiring somebody internal, and they're going to be there to like look at reports, to look at events that are happening on a day-to-day basis. There could be something that is firing off that's not causing really any issues to prevent somebody from, doing their business. Consider like data exfiltration. If someone is just inside the environment and they, send off some data, that's not going to necessarily take you down, right? But you don't want that to happen regardless. So having like a SIM solution in place with a SOC team behind it that's able to kind of review that on a proactive basis, as well as to be there for response in the event there is an actual active attack. Someone that's there that's trained in expertise for incident response and knows exactly what to do on a next step basis. That's where the difference lies from an end user support help desk. So we're both trying to complete the same goal, but the main difference is we're looking, we're pulling up the rug to see what's actually going on. We want to make sure that there's not something that's quiet, that's, scurrying around like a mouse, that's not eventually going to impact your business. So, and then we're all, that team has cybersecurity experts behind it. And the whole goal being, cybersecurity experts are particularly expensive resources. So having like a team behind a, powerful solution like a SIM is much more beneficial than you might think. And is a missing piece to your business if you only rely on your current end user help desk.
You mentioned a SOC several times, Braxton. That's a
Yeah.
security operations center, right? And
That's right.
is that
Yeah.
different from a what we might call a cybersecurity service desk, or is that sort of the same name for the same two different names for the same thing?
No, it's pretty much similar. So a SOC, your security operations center, it sounds a little bit more expansive than probably just having like a security service desk, but really if you think about it, it's the exact same thing. It's just a security service desk. Maybe you have multiple teams or, however that's broken out, but at the end of the day, they're using like some sort of like SIM solution, something to aggregate the logs, and you have a team or teams coordinated around that to be there for response.
Right, thank you. So moving on here, we also wanted to talk a bit about the specific differences between cybersecurity and end user support. Especially for the non-technical people amongst the crowd, which includes me. These things can kind of feel like they're rolled up into one. Maybe you just have a number that that you call, that whenever you have some sort of computer issue, you call this number and they do some things and they fix it. And that might be what it seems like on the end user side, right? But there really is quite a bit of different stuff going on behind the scenes there, especially when you have multiple teams, like Braxton just said, serving on a SOC, a security operations center, versus a end user kind of day in and day out support. So if you could maybe speak to that a bit, and why shouldn't just one team or maybe even one person do all of this stuff?
Yeah, so you don't want to have someone or a team performing multiple roles or wearing multiple hats inside your organization. The reason being is when it comes to like cybersecurity, there is a bit of a balance on, how secure are we making something and how convenient are we making it, or inconvenient even, for our end users and their ability to do their jobs. So when you consider like an end user support desk, not saying this is the case for everybody that works in IT, but if you kind of think about what their primary goal is are the applications working? Are the servers up? Is the network up? Is the business still running? And all of that matters. All of that is very important, but that is the number one primary goal. So when you consider, what are they doing in like a break fix scenario to make sure that the business is still up and running to fix it? you come at odds. So like consider like your IT admin has like a domain administrator account for convenience, for like speed of fixing anything like that. Perhaps that is the only account they use, and they use that account on a day-to-day basis, which exposes it, which you don't have any fallback. You're not able to provide any like additional security controls to that one account. So it's inherently less secure because of that, and your IT admin might be tempted to do that just based on like convenience, or not implementing multi-factor authentication for like client VPNs because end users complain about it, or they don't want to be bothered with it. So from an efficacy standpoint, maybe it might make more sense to them. So to make sure that everything runs a little bit more smoothly and everyone can still do their business, we're not going to implement it, but that's less secure. So you come at odds when you wear multiple hats like that, which is why you want to have separate teams. And separate teams are important because cybersecurity knowledge is specialized, as is other knowledge in the IT world. This is why you have server admins. This is why you have network engineers, because they are specialized knowledge, and cybersecurity is very much the same way. And you can't expect one person to hold all that knowledge and to be that effective of an expert in it. And there are some things regarding like an end user support or your typical IT admin concerning cybersecurity that they probably don't have any experience or knowledge in. One of those things would be like policy, and how does the business operate, just administratively, like from a business continuity standpoint or a disaster recovery incident response type of plan or policy. They might have their DR plan all up in their head, but as it pertains to like what is like a fully matured policy that we need to see, getting it to the leaders of the business, making sure that it's fully fleshed out with the team and contact information and what needs to come out first, they're not necessarily going to be the expert in that, which is why you need to make sure that you have somebody on your team that is the expert to that level of operational knowledge.
I think it's really important to keep. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Braxton. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's like with, consider like IT and cybersecurity, like a doctor. We know that doctors are experts on things, right? Experts about the human body. We know that there's a high level of education and things that needs to come into place for someone to become a doctor. But then if you drill deeper, there are cardiologists. So just because, I'm sure a doctor knows a lot about a heart, but a cardiologist knows a lot more about a heart than other doctors. So I'm sure an IT admin knows a lot about cybersecurity, but an actual cybersecurity expert knows way more, and that matters.
And I was just going to say, I think it's really important how much you brought up the policy side, and that striking the balance of how difficult this stuff could be to implement at your business. Because ultimately, while cybersecurity is clearly a discipline within the IT tech world, it's heavily rooted in people. Would you agree with that? And that it's not just servers, and it's not just malware detection and all this different sort of technical stuff. At the end of the day, it comes down to people, because they're ultimately very commonly, I didn't actually pull the statistic for this one, but if I can maybe remember off the top of my head, it's nearly 80%, maybe Braxton has this more available than I do, of attacks involve some sort of human element, right? And I think it's really important to have that level of human interaction, and I feel like that's really what cybersecurity experts can help bring, and it's certainly something that Braxton helps bring.
It's 82%. It's
is it? I was close. I was really close. Yeah, so 80 stuck in my mind. Yeah.
So the end user is the riskiest part of an organization or a business always. So in IT, end user support, they're going to focus on like the technical side of things, like your actual servers, like your antivirus software applications, are those working? We focus on what is the business doing operationally from a policy point? What about actual physical controls. How are we actually protecting like physical access inside and outside of the building to protect end users, to protect data, to protect that hardware. So it's a lot more expansive than just, whether or not you can open up Microsoft Edge, for example.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. Moving on here. We do want to get to our questions for Quentin and kind of what his day-to-day looks like doing this real frontline sort of stuff. But before that, would like to address kind of the bottom line value of all of this, because obviously that's important, especially, we know a lot of people in the audience come from small and mid-sized organizations, typically not large multinational enterprises and such that have endless amounts of money to spend on anything. And the value is an important conversation to have. But before that, I was curious what you all thought the average cost, and I'll say this is according to an IBM study that was conducted toward the second half of 2022, so fairly recent data here. What's the average cost of a single breached record? And record is broadly defined in this report as essentially anything that can have customer or employee data on it. So it could be as simple as an invoice that you received, even an invoice you received 20 years ago, right? So we'll be bringing this up now. You should see it on your screens now. And I'm just curious, what do you think the average cost of a single breached record? So you would multiply however many records have been compromised, right, by whatever this number ends up being. And that would be just the cost of the attack, not to mention potentially cleanup and potentially like cascading effects from it. But just curious here. I'm gonna let this go for a little longer, try to give you all enough time to vote here. Looks like most people are coming in. We've got actually I'll share this one after we're finished here. So if you can get your vote in, it won't share your name or anything like that, but it'll show the percentages of what we gathered. All right, I'll be closing in just a couple seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. And let's see. 31% of you said $164 per record. That is actually correct. 62% said 512, which fortunately that is you are incorrect. And then 8% coming in at $56, which less than half of what the actual projected average cost of this is. So again, even for a small business, an attack like this, a data breach like this, could result in thousands of breached records. And according to IBM's research, on average, each one will cost about $164 for your business. I thought that was some interesting research that I came across after when preparing for this, and it kind of helps set the tone a bit for the bottom line value of just taking cybersecurity seriously. So I guess my question for you, Braxton, is why should SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses, why should they invest in cybersecurity?
So it makes a lot of money. It's a business, and as a result, it's growing wildly. Cybercrime costs are expected to hit $10.2 trillion by 2025. And $1 trillion is a lot of money, right? But to kind of put that, I wanted to try and put that into a different perspective for myself. So I looked to see, what are the highest GDPs, gross domestic products of countries out there. And when I looked, there were only two countries that had a GDP over $10 trillion, and that's the United States and China. So if this were a country, this would be third place. And the actual third place is Japan at about 5 trillion. So it's only half of this. So I hope that helps put in perspective exactly how much money is circulating in cybercrime.
And this is just to clarify too, this is just crime. This isn't the cybersecurity industry, this is purely just the money taken from illegal attacks, right?
Yeah, and it's only what's been reported too. So
Exactly. Yeah.
again, you might have been attacked and there might have been some data leaked and you don't know it. So that's not been reported. So it could be even more. But for an SMB, what's one of the biggest challenges for a small to medium-sized business? I immediately go to like budget, financial roadblocks or bottlenecks. I mean, SMBs, you can't be expected to operate on the same level as like Fifth Third Bank, budgetary wise. What could we possibly invest, into cybersecurity? Why do we need to do that? And the reason why you need to do that is because of that line of thinking that we're too small to be hit. We don't have enough money to invest, or what have you. You need to start, planning actually around, like, from a budgetary fiscal perspective to invest in cybersecurity. Because you are going to be attacked as a result. They're either going to hope that you've not invested, or because you have, less access to resources or funds, and you've not done, the investment that you need to, they're going to use you as a stepping stone to get to a bigger fish. You're not too small to be attacked, because there's always a path for them to make use of your data or someone else's as a result. So for an SMB, the challenge is that, if you want to get like a security service desk, you want to get a SIM solution implemented, that costs money. And having someone internally to man that, to review that, can also be costly, especially if it's just for one person. Which is why, there are services out there and organizations that can provide like a security service desk. So you get like a team of experts at a, competitive cost for that, to make it, a little bit more accessible for SMBs.
Great. Yeah, I think I've looked into it a couple of times. It depends on where your organization's based, where you're hiring from, but even a somewhat junior level cybersecurity technician can run $100,000 salary. And that's a fairly average cost. Obviously, maybe a little bit less depending on where you are, and things like that. Could be a lot more as well. And that's for a fairly junior person. And I think it's important to realize that what Braxton said, where you may not need the services of a full-time staff for this sort of thing. So it can make more budgetary sense to just get the pieces you need when you need them, right? But clearly, I think the bottom line here is that cybersecurity is just as threatening as like a building fire to businesses or anything like that. It can be completely devastating, especially if you don't have that disaster recovery plan in place to figure out how to bounce back from something like this. So thank you, Braxton, for letting us pick your brain. Braxton will stick around until the end of this presentation, and he'll be happy to answer any questions that come our way. I do want to remind everybody that there is the questions pane in your GoToWebinar selection of tools there, and you can ask us a question there or drop it in chat, and we'll make sure that it gets into the Q&A as well. But now we're going to move on to the second part of this presentation, and we'll be speaking with Quentin, who hasn't gotten to pipe up too much yet, but his time's coming. So as a reminder, Quentin is a security service desk technician here at NetGain. We do offer cybersecurity services, the whole range of them. We'd be happy to talk to you about that, of course. And Quentin is on the front lines of this, or at least that's how I see it. I don't know if he would agree with that or not, but that's how I see it. He's kind of on the front lines of this. He's dealing with the day-to-day happenings, day-to-day incidents, right, that happen on the networks that he covers. And essentially, if you worked into a partnership with NetGain, somebody like Quentin or Quentin himself would be the one protecting your network. So I prepared a few questions for him, and as kind of a look behind the security desk. So Quentin, when you come in for the day, say it's Monday morning, what's the first thing you do when you log in?
Well, probably the first thing I'll do is actually review our ticketing system and prioritize all of our tickets that we've received between the following day and that morning, and be able to base those off of severity and the type of ticket.
Great. So you said there's a system for severity and priority. Is that how many steps are there, and then how do you decide? What are some examples, I guess, of what could fall into those different incident categories?
So a lot of that prioritization comes from the type of risk that a type of event may hold. So a high priority event may include something like a sign of lateral movement through an environment. A medium priority event could be a sign in from outside of a permitted country. And some low severity things are something like verifying the cleanup of a malware detection that your anti-malware is already alerted that it has been cleaned. And we're just doing a follow through there.
Great, thanks. So let's say you come in and there's not even any low priority incidents for the networks that you monitor. Everything is entirely green, and there's nothing to take care of. Do you just wait until an incident occurs and then you jump on it, or is there something that you can do even in these I'll call them like peaceful times, right, where there's nothing going on?
So whenever I'm not actively working on any of those kinds of alerts or tickets, what I will do is spend time reviewing observations that are on a network in order to adjust thresholds for that alerting to make sure that we are really getting everything that we should be seeing. I'll spend time analyzing inbound and outbound network activity and even assist with the creation of remediation plans for vulnerabilities.
Gotcha. And what sort of vulnerabilities can you catch? You mentioned, remediation plans for vulnerabilities. Just generally, what sort of things are you looking out for?
We're looking out for anything that could be a weakness in an asset in the organization that could allow a threat actor to enter that organization's environment. And that could be something like a misconfiguration, whether it be on a firewall or some other network appliance, outdated software, or any other type of issue like that.
Great. So, question three I had for you here. If a network you monitor, you actually mentioned this just a minute ago about outside sign-in attempts. So, if a network you monitor has a lot of failed login attempts from suspicious countries, clearly countries where the business isn't doing business, or maybe they're known as a high uh, attack type country. We all hear quite a bit, I think, about Russia and China. If you see a bunch of failed login attempts, what do you do?
So the very first thing I would do is verify that none of those attempts have succeeded. I want to make sure that whoever is attempting to access that account has not accessed it, and all of that has failed. After that, what I would do is work with either NetGain engineers or a organization's local IT and ensure that any security measures such as geofiltering are in place so that those attacks are being blocked.
Great. So, how common is this sort of thing? Is it fairly common even for a small business that seemingly should be flying under the radar? Is it pretty common for these sorts of failed attacks to happen?
These sorts of attacks are very common, especially since a lot of these attacks can be automated. It makes it very easy for an attack to start and just start hitting as many people as they can.
So they're just trying to force passwords, right? Somehow they probably got a login, I would assume, and they're just trying to force their way in through like, any means necessary, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And this kind of calls back to what Braxton said about how cybersecurity is a specific discipline within the IT industry as a whole, and how he used a metaphor around physicians, right? And how cardiologists are a specialized form of doctor. So how do you keep up to date on your specialty of cybersecurity?
Uh, what I will do is I'll be constantly reviewing news articles or announcements of new types of vulnerabilities, as well as just continuing education and different types of certifications, um, and just really focusing on what is new, what has been happening, because a new vulnerability happens every day.
Right. And then I know there are also, I hear you all talk about 0 days quite a bit, which is, from my understanding, it's a vulnerability that is out even before an application is out or before an updated application is out. Is that essentially what a 0 day is?
Essentially what it is it could be a vulnerability that's out there right now, but we're not aware of it. And
Okay.
once we're made aware of it, that's the moment that it becomes like a 0 day. There's a lot of scrambling that comes with that because you're learning new things about it as it happens. So the workarounds could change, the fixes, there may not even be a fix. The fixes could change, the workarounds could change, the full impact could change as you're, responding to it. They are a struggle, and they happen every day, which is why you kind of have to approach like our education is constant.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking at what's happening on a day-to-day basis, but also even conceptually, like we can go higher. Like for example, like cloud in general. There's a lot of cybersecurity concepts regarding cloud, and cloud's exploding, and is one of the things that I'm actively educating myself on as well. So it goes beyond just what has happened today in terms of a 0 day vulnerability, but probably from the perspective of like a service desk. That's probably what we're looking for is, like what's happening on the day to day, what's new, what do we need to respond to?
Yeah. That makes sense. Thanks, guys. And then let's see. Finally, back to Quentin. What's the most memorable incident that you've had to deal with on the security desk, and what did you do to actually deal with it?
So I would say my most memorable incident probably had to be the first time I noticed a email forwarding rule was created for somebody's email. And what was happening is anytime one person received an email from a coworker, it was automatically being deleted. And that just looked a little suspicious to me. So I called that person whose account created that rule, and they let me know they didn't create that. That allowed me to understand that their account was compromised. So my next steps were to make sure that no further actions are taken. I help that person reset their password. We lock out the attacker, and after reviewing things of what emails were sent, I figured out that what we had done from this one reacting to one alert ended up being a proactive solution that stopped a wire transfer fraud.
So they had this attacker. They had targeted somebody that had accounting information, I'm assuming, and had the ability to move funds around within the business, right?
Yes, they had compromised one user and reached out to somebody else that was able to actually do the wire transfer. That way, it looked like it was coming from a genuine source.
Right, right. I think that the big thing I take from that is how you reached out to the person first. That seems like that's almost the first thing you did, right? Yeah, I think that gets back to what Braxton was saying about how there's this human element to cybersecurity, and it's not all just software and patches and ones and zeros, right? There's always a human element, and that person that you had to reach out to, Quentin, totally unbeknownst to them, they were in the middle of a cyber attack, right? And I think it just gets back to that idea that, or that fact that there's a human element to, well, 82%, I guess, of all of these. So thank you. I appreciate that look into what happens day to day. I think a lot of times during these conversations we talk very high level about policies and all of that, and that's clearly very important. But sometimes I think we don't pay so much attention to what's happening with those frontline boots on the ground sort of situations. And I appreciate your look into that, Quentin. So thank you. But I would like to go to Q&A time. We've had a couple that have come in. So if you do have a question and you haven't put one in yet, please take this time to do that. You can drop that into the questions panel or just chat as well, and we can handle that. So let's see. And Braxton or Quinn, feel free to take these. I'm just going to throw them out and see what we get here. Are there any security concerns around having the same company do both end user and cybersecurity support?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, there are. I mean, that kind of falls back on the, we don't want people wearing multiple hats. We don't want teams to have to share the roles because you kind of inherently fight against each other as a result. But also you have like the fox guarding the hen house type scenario. You don't want like your IT admin to also have the obligation of considering cybersecurity because they don't have a very fair perspective of it. Because if you're trying to address making sure that someone can do their job and also keeping things secure, some things at play, like what's more convenient for me to, fix this for the end user, what's more convenient for the end user, as opposed to, is this, what are the chances of us, getting attacked as a result of me implementing this? The lines get a little bit blurry. So that's why we have that separation of an end user support and like a security service desk, just because our goals and our responsibilities are different.
Gotcha. Thank you, Braxton. I appreciate that. And we have not really a question here, but I think it's a really good point to bring up. Somebody from the audience said, not a question, but I would like to add that a great aspect of security incidents affects businesses' credibility and reputation. And if you want to speak to that, Braxton, feel free. But I'll just say, from my kind of layman's point of view here, that's absolutely correct. Because if I hear that, like, God forbid, like, it's my bank or something, right? But if I hear they've had an incident, I'm immediately making sure that my stuff is okay and that they have, or if it's not okay, that they have some sort of recovery plan. But then after that, I'm probably not going to be doing business with them much longer. And depending on if there has been some sort of actual damage to whatever I do with that business, I might be looking for some sort of payment, right, for that damage that occurred based on the cyber attack that happened to this business. So yeah, not really a question, but I'm not sure if you have anything to speak to that, Braxton, but just about the non-technical, non-financial even, but just the reputational damage that a cyber attack can have.
Well, even reputational damage is most certainly going to be financially impacting. The big problem with that is you can't quantify it. I can't. How am I supposed to be able to determine how many people, like in your example, Chris, how many people are out there like you that are like, I don't want to put my money into that solution or to that vendor, or maybe I did already, and I need to, I'm going to, take legal action on them because I don't know what is going to happen now with my data or something like that. So you can't quantify that. You absolutely can quantify many parts of an incident. How long were we down? As a result, how much product could we not make, or how many like transactions could we not process, or what have you, as a result? How many engineers did we have to employ to get us fixed? How long did that take? How expensive were these engineers? You can quantify all that, but things like reputational damage, what are the, how many new customers are we not going to be able to get on now because they heard rumors of what happened to us, or who's going to go to competitors now because of that? I mean, it's just impossible to quantify.
Yeah, you could be hearing about it 5 years later.
Yeah.
Even though the thing has been completely cleaned up, it's been taken care of, you've had no incidents since then. 5 years later, somehow it comes up, the prospect says, "Well, weren't you all hacked a couple of years back?"
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can really do about that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. It's unquantifiable, and who knows what sort of real damage that can have. I think it also gets to, again, that point that there's human elements to all of this, and that you can't always just rely on the cybersecurity tools. Clearly, they're very powerful, right? The software side of things and all of that, the tools that people like Quentin and Braxton are using day in and day out. But there is always a human side to both dealing with attacks as they happen, like we heard from Quentin, but also even in the remediation plan. And I think that's really where having people at your disposal like Braxton and Quentin can come into play. Well, let's see here. Finally, there is still time to ask a question. Please feel free. But if not, this would be our last one. Someone's curious. What's the largest attack that you've had to deal with?
There's been several. The biggest one is probably a manufacturing company that has 400, 500 users that had a ransomware incident breakout. So I responded to that. The immediate fix of getting devices cleaned, everything back up to, production so that they can do their job took roughly 2 weeks. And then the fallout of that and the kind of the overall like cleanup job, because we focused on the devices to get production up primarily. That's number one thing. So other like tertiary devices, like someone's desktop or laptop, that's not necessarily needed for like lines to run. Those came later. So like that overall cleanup probably took about anywhere from like 2 to 3 months just over time. And that was incredibly costly just from, you have like a week and a half to 2 weeks of that organization not making money on top of the engineering time that they had to pay for over a period of 2 to 3 months, especially at like emergent rates, because it just, if it falls out of the sky, that is an emergency. So it is quite costly. So, but that's probably the biggest that I personally had to experience, about 400, 500 users.
Gotcha. And we actually did have one come in during your answer for that, Braxton. What sites do you all recommend for reading up on cybersecurity?
So that would be, there's a few that we typically kind of look at, like I'll plug like bleepingcomputer.com. That's one that always has like some pretty common like 0 days that are out there, different types of attacks that are occurring. CISA, CISA, that's a government agency that has cybersecurity news feeds. ISC Squared is the organization that I held my CISSP from. That's the Computer Information Security Systems Professional. Man, it's a mouthful, but they always have newsletters and feeds like that. So you have, even people like, I'll even plug like forums like Reddit. If you go to like a network security Reddit subreddit, those are people that are out there that are experiencing it from the day to day. So that can be useful as well. So setting up like an RSS feed to kind of provide you that up-to-date information just as it comes is incredibly beneficial.
Awesome, thank you. And let me do one final check here, but I do believe that is everything. It is. Well, with that, I would just like to say thank you for everybody for attending. We will actually have another webinar on May 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be speaking with an HP security expert on some different ways that HP is approaching cybersecurity, specifically through newer server generations and things like that. So that'll be coming up in early May, on May 3rd. I'm sure you'll probably hear from us. If you heard from us with this, you'll probably hear from us about that as well. But would love to see you there. And again, I'd just like to thank Quentin and Braxton for your all's time and expertise today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Have a good day, everybody.